All right, we're live. Welcome to the Musty Wargamers Show, Season 8, Episode 12. And the three amigos are here tonight, minus Dan, who decided that spending time with picking his daughter up from the airport is more important than doing the show.
How dare him?
Dang it. We'll forgive him this time. He gets a pass.
Yeah.
So that's where, if you're wondering where Dan is, that's where he's at. He's on the road. On his way to, he's probably by this time he's coming back from home, most likely.
We all have almost a perfect. We're all pretty good when it comes to attendance record. I think that Dan, we all. I think that was one of the great things, even when Tim and Dan decided to join us, is that we have a big enough group that if somebody decides to hop out, we can carry a show pretty easily.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's all good.
You get one pass. You better be in the hospital, Tim.
That was my on-screen response. If you actually saw what I said when he said it. I'm just kidding. Oh, it looks like Clark is in the house.
Hi, Clark. How's it going?
Yeah.
Oh, so how's everybody doing?
Well, since I was
feeling better.
Yeah, it was really weird. It took a lot out of me. I really didn't start feeling myself until like about Saturday or Sunday after being in the hospital. Yeah. That was no joke, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It was horrible. Yeah. It was horrible. And the weirdest thing to the whole thing, I never had a fever. All I had were those god awful shakes and chills and stuff.
The chills where you're sitting on a paint shaker and you're freezing to death while sweating.
Yeah, the one nurse came in she says, "I just can't believe you don't have a fever. Let me take your temperature." She came back 3 times to take my temperature because she couldn't believe I didn't have a fever. And I didn't.
That is surprising a little bit.
Yeah, but see, that's why it wasn't a flu virus.
Yeah.
That's why it wasn't the normal flu, because I didn't have that part of it. It was a food-borne virus. And the irony is, the thing that I ate, I really liked. It was so disappointing when they told me. I thought, well, because my girlfriend and I, we ever since Saturday night had eaten the same thing. We had eaten the same meals.
Yeah.
And she never got sick. So we had to go back to the one time that we didn't. And the one time we did, it was something I had at a restaurant. I will not name names. And it was like, you got to be kidding. And it was awful.
What type of food was it? What type of food?
It was Tex-Mex.
Okay. Yep. I love that too.
I know. It's like I was so disappointed. It's like, what, this? Oh well.
But yeah, it took similar to that. Way back when I was a kid, I got something of that nature, and I was eating tapioca at the time, and it's like I can't eat tapioca today because it just brings back too many memories of just being deathly ill.
Yeah, some friends of mine asked me if they invited us to go to that restaurant again, and I thought, nah, I just can't. I just can't.
Couldn't do it. Wouldn't be prudent at this junction.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm doing good. I just didn't feel like hobbying, didn't feel like painting, didn't feel like doing anything. I was pretty much a zombie for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really now getting kind of my energy back up and ready to roll. But yeah.
Getting your motivation back.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
What are you working on tonight there?
Well, from Warlord Games, the Waterloo epic scale.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I
put
was
me
wondering.
little British guys together.
Okay, ranking them up.
Yeah,
Is that a
yep.
single rank or is that multiple ranks in file?
Double rank. Yeah, double ranks.
Okay. So can you take those apart before you paint them, or?
I'm not painting these guys. I did some soul searching, and I was asking myself, at my age, how much time and energy do I want to apply to something that to me is going to be of dubious quality at best from my perspective,
Yeah.
and the time that's going to take, because I have a massive selection of this stuff. And I thought, no, I'm just not going to do that. I'll do it the old-fashioned way with little name cards and stuff on the front to tell you what they are, and that's all I'm doing. Now, I've seen people that have painted these. I've seen them, and if you want to take the time, you can make that epic stuff look pretty awesome. But at that 3-foot rule, it's something this small. Yeah. The cavalry models, I kind of gotten started on one guy here a little bit, kind of working, just kind of put some brown on the horse, just to kind of
expand
see if I could, just to see if I could bring myself to do it.
Yeah.
And I think I could do the cavalry guys, but these ranked up infantry, I mean, I don't know. I thought about well, I'll paint the front of the front rank and the back of the back rank, and and the guns, and that'd be it. I
thought
think for
about
me,
that.
it's just, I'm just going to use them as markers and go on.
When the
I'll save my painting efforts for. Remember I told you that Eldritch, I ordered a guy.
Yeah.
That the one that 3D print.
Oh yeah.
So he kind of came in, and I'm kind of, God, that light's not just bring it down a little bit.
We got Clyde. Maybe. We got Clyde, Chris, and
it's now drowning you out there. But
three people joined in. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice looking.
But yeah, that's the one I had 3D printed. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Wow, and that looks pretty impressive.
Yeah. I'm just kind of getting started on him, and this is basically going to be for my Chaos Warriors and stuff, my Marauders and stuff. So
that's cool.
Because he doesn't really look very historical; he looks more fantasy-esque, and so I'm going to put him in that. And but I really like it, and I'm taking my time with it. I'm not going to get in a big hurry to finishing, because he is like $25, all by himself. So I want to take some time with him, but that is a rabbit hole that I have to make sure I stay away from. That sitting there and creating characters with different weapons and heads and body shapes and sizes and stuff. Oh my God. You talk about an addiction.
Yeah, you do it and not buy it though. You could do it and not buy it too. Just have some fun, right? Go on there and
design
just
stuff.
Around.
Well, yeah, you can, but
and you want it though.
It's like doing anything that's somewhat nefarious. Eventually you're going to succumb to that temptation.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that I spend as little time doing that as possible, because I will buy a ton of these. If you were like a really heavy D&D player or something, and you wanted like something really special to stand out, I think it's pretty cool. I like what they.
I think that's where it's at, though. Is if you wanted a special character that you design yourself for your role playing or whatever.
Yes.
I was going to say,
because you can do what?
I was going to say, with those epic scale right there that you're doing, I could easily see using contrast paints to paint those really quickly.
Well, a lot of guys do. I watched a bunch of videos, and when I started looking at the number of miniatures I have, and this is just the English, let alone the French that I have. I would rather spend my time painting 28s or bigger.
Yeah.
And or 18s, something like this, which is basically about 15 to 18, I think. Oops, go this way. It's about an 18. Man, my lights are crazy. Yeah, it's about an 18 millimeter scale. That I feel comfortable painting, but these guys, I just don't. You got to stay in your wheelhouse. You got to stay in your lane, and I think that's a lane I don't want to even waste a lot of time working on.
Yeah.
And
do what you like, right? You gotta do what you enjoy.
Well, when I painted my 28s, for AWI, I used contrast paints just so I could paint them really quickly. I didn't feel like spending a lot of time on them, and it works pretty decently.
Okay. Yeah,
and they look good. Like that's like whatever works.
The 3-foot rule, and you're on a big enough table, and you got enough of them. I mean, are you really going to see that much of your painting efforts pay off for you? I mean, if you're really good like you guys are, that's one thing. I am pretty much a hack, and so I know that at this scale, it would be a hack job, and I'm not going to waste that time. I've got a whole Persian army I still got to break out and do. I still got a whole Celtic army I got to break out and do. So yeah, I got plenty of stuff I'm going to spend time painting. It's just not going to be at this scale. Just not going to do it.
I'd say when the local game castle was going out of business, and they were having everything was 50% off. They had the Napoleonic epic armies. They had the British army and the Waterloo army, and then they had the French Waterloo army box, the big box set.
Yeah,
they had like 500 miniatures in each one, and
yeah,
I think
that's what I've got as the starter armies. Yeah,
and it was like $190 per box, and they were supposed to be 50% off. And I looked at them, and they were listed. They already had a sticker on for $115. And I went and said, okay. And they're ringing them up, and it's like, well, that'd be like $200-something. How's that $200-something? I go, well, they're 50% off, with tax and everything, it's about $200. And I was like, but they're marked for $115. That's 50% of 115. And they go, no, it's not. And it's like right there, the sticker on it was like, oh, that's got to be marked wrong. And I said, well, you're giving those to me for 50% off. Like, no, we're not going to do that. So they grabbed them from me and stuck them under the counter and said, all right, we're not selling them for that much. Like, I was kind of torqued because I wanted to buy them.
Well, that would have been an awfully good deal. If you could have pulled that off, that would have been an awfully good deal.
Yeah, I was like, I seen that, and I was like, oh, I'm buying these. Even if I flip them, and sell them back on eBay, I would have made some money off those things. But
yeah, I had these guys when I first got them. Like I said, it was an impulse buy, and I thought, maybe I'll just get rid of these and buy the ACW stuff, or wait till something else comes out. I could get rid of them.
If I already didn't have 15 mil ACW, I'd be working on picking up the epic stuff.
Yeah. My buddy, he's got both the north and the south in the epic scale. So when I go to his house, we'll be playing that, and then when he comes over here, we'll be doing some Napoleonics and that sort of thing, which will be fun.
Yeah. They just announced this week American War of Independence, AWI, is going to be on an epic scale. So if I didn't have a bunch of 28 mil already, I'd be jumping on that. They're a little late to the party. That's all I gotta say.
Don't blame you a bit.
Say hi to some of the people that hopped in here real quick before we get on to Palmer. Clark says it's been a stressful week. Poor time management has led to rushing to get stuff painted for Adepticon essentially the last 2 weeks, which Adepticon is going on right now, I believe. Enough cowbell to keep the fever away. Gotta love the cowbell. And we got hello, Chris. We got the hey ho, Clyde and Cruz. Let's see. Hey, and then we got our sword and sake man is in the house. How's Japan?
Sword and sake.
And Dan is MIA because he's picking up his daughter from the airport. So she was flying into Omaha, so he was driving over to pick her up during the show. So that's where Dan is. We gave him a pass. Yeah, you get a pass every once in a while, even though family's not really important enough to skip the show. But I guess I guess so. But,
to each their own.
Yeah, I know. It's just weird. You gotta see the size of their gophers around here. Those things will get you. Corn-fed gophers. AWI Epic is coming. I'm moving more and more to the smaller scales due to when I retire from moving 28 is going to be a pain to pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
what I got so far.
Oh,
let me see.
So far, oh, wow. Look at that.
Wow. That's going quick.
That's an amazing base coat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really smooth.
It's like so uniform.
Yeah. It reminds me of back in the day. We used to play at one of the game stores we had. You said you had to play with painted models. And
oh, good God.
Guys would take like whatever a couple cans of like Krylon and just go, and then they'll do like another dash of Zenithal over top of it. It's like it's got two colors, or maybe they'll do another dash of a different color and said it's got three colors.
Yeah.
And there's one guy, his orcs were blaze orange with black blaze and yellow. Like, oh my God, it was horrible.
Yeah. Rules like that are gatekeeper things.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
The owner was big into historical miniatures, and he wanted people, and he sold paints himself, so he wanted people to paint their stuff. So.
Well, I mean, I can see it as like a suggestion and say this is where you can take it to, but to make it mandatory, I mean, get them in the door, get people in the door, get them involved in that other stuff will come in time, you know, and everybody will find their little niche as far as that stuff goes. Some people are rabid painters. Me, I'm a functional painter.
Get it
if
done.
I can find a function for it, I'll paint it.
Slap some stuff on it and call it good. We got GM Cody then. Howdy ho.
Cool.
I slap chop my Epic using contrast. Yeah, it will go quickly that way. Especially if you prime it in like white or a gray and then you got all the whites on it. You can keep the band, the belts and stuff white and just contrast paint everything. It's like, it saves yourself a bunch of time of trying to paint white.
Yeah, white's one of those tricky colors that just.
Tim looks like he's being interrogated under the spotlight.
Oh, yeah. Might want to put that back up a little bit.
There you go.
I like my new light, but on camera it's not that great.
Yeah, you get some glare off your head there, and it gets some good reflection.
Well, it's Too bad I don't have a hat in here. Yeah, that might dull it down a little bit if we get a hat.
All right, then we got Percy Block is in the house. Welcome. That Warlord Epic stuff is a small 15. Yeah, it's what, 13.5, I think, is the scale.
Yeah, something like that. Stuff. Yeah. Of course, it's not the smallest scale I own.
Yeah, if you've ever played with 6mm, it's like if you
That's
played
what I've got.
Battletech.
I got some Bacchus 6mm stuff. In a couple of boxes, and it's like, I looked at that, and I'm not painting that either.
Well, actually, the 6mm is easy to paint. It's like you don't need to put a lot of details on the crap. That's true. I told you about when we played the Austerlitz in 6mm. The entire Austerlitz battlefield was in 6mm. It was pretty epic, let me tell you. When you rank up a whole bunch of 6mm stuff, it looks pretty cool. Buddy bought a ton of epic ACW stuff, and we've been playing Fire and Fury with it all. It looks great on the table. You talking about this rule set, Fire and Fury?
Cool.
Yeah. I've been reading the rule book here lately. Yeah, it's like that's the rule set to play. It's like we played the first edition of Fire and Fury. Now I got the Regimental Fire and Fury. Getting Dan into it. Mr. Dashing. And then we're moving south to Southeast Asia for retirement. So I have to get rid of a lot of stuff for moving. Oh, you're leaving. Leaving the country, huh? Which country are you talking about? Malaysia or something over that way?
Thailand, maybe.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine, he when he retired, he moved to Thailand. Yeah.
I know a guy that moved to the Philippines. So, but his wife was Filipino, so that makes sense, you know.
Right.
Yes, sir. But brigade. Yes, there's a two-fish. Regimental or brigade. So yeah, you got your two different scales of how many people are on the battlefield. Yeah, the brigade one is a lot easier if you're playing larger battles, because when you look at playing in the regimental one, it's like we need some battles over 200 stands, 200 to 300 stands per side. That's a lot. And which I'm going to be working on. I got to tonight. I'm going to be cleaning. I got 2 more packs of stuff here for my union. I got to clean up and everything and start mounting on card stock. And
now, when you play epic style, do you use like movement trays and stuff for your units, or do you just move the stands individually?
Mean like the 15s? Yeah,
or smaller.
Yeah, it's like there have been times. It's like if I'm playing my 15mm Armies Over Cannon and stuff like that, I have movement trays. I can move them around. It just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah,
you know, it's all it is just a piece of balsa wood that you just move around.
Well, I was thinking that would be a lot easier as I was measuring these things out for movement trays and stuff. I'm like, man, I picking each one of these up individually and be like moving individual 28mm of whole units, and it's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's when you're doing it's like in 28mm. Heck yeah, when Dan and I were playing our American War of Independence, you know, we made movement trays that were specifically made for the game. Made it a heck of a lot easier just moving, because you don't remove models in that game system. Land of the Free. It was based on troop quality and degrading a unit down to the point it broke, and then you removed it that way, which was kind of cool.
I prefer systems where you have no model removal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of model removal anymore. It seems like it's a tedious extra. You know?
Yeah, it just depends on the system. I guess if you played a lot of old world, Warhammer Fantasy, you got used to it in a way.
Yeah.
So Chris is going to Thailand. All right.
Yeah, there you
go. Cody said, I sold all my ACW, so I guess he's picking it up. Okay, he says, I'm being put out to pasture due to my PTS, so need an affordable place to live. It's quiet, yeah. That'll
do it.
All right, so what have you been up to, Palmer?
Well, gaming, not as much. I've been tending to organize my weeks where I have a week where I'm gaming and a week where I'm not most of the time now. And sometimes that's not always the case. But I got a game of Rebel Slam tomorrow. It'll be my third game of that. I didn't play anything else this week. And so I'm looking at getting a drop fleet game in the next couple weeks, most likely, because I think the person that I'm playing that is that they work out of town and then a lot. And so next time they're in town, we're going to be playing a game. And then I got a game of DBA this weekend, actually, too. But last week I didn't have any gaming at all. So this is sort of, I guess, my on week. And so that's sort of the gaming. Also looking, and when I talked about that tournament for Old World, there's a group that does a slow grow league here. And so it's mainly geared towards, they started playing at 500. Now they're at 1,000 and they're painting and doing other stuff. I'm going to try to join up with them, even though my stuff's painted, just to get some games in. And so I'll be probably gaming twice a month with that group for Old World, which would be cool. And so beyond that, right now I'm painting for a buddy all of those ships that I showed on my channel earlier. And I don't know if you can see, you probably can't see. Oh, there you go. Maybe under the light of it. They've got all this like detail here. I'm painting red lights on at the moment. And so right now I'm painting all of this red lights, but I've done this airbrushing in the front. And so there's a bit of a grade here of blue from airbrushing, and then I did some dry brushing on it. And so these are that's actually a little bit better, but these are the PHR post-Human Republic ships for drop fleet. And I've got this many more that I'm working on at the moment. And then I've got about another one like this, except they're smaller, so it's not as much to paint after. And then I've actually got some large capital ships that are even bigger than these, two of them that are battle cruisers that I'm going to be doing for him as well as I got two for my
the ones you're going to magnetize?
Yeah, those are the ones that I'm going to magnetize exactly from the video. And so I'm working on these right now. I'm actually having fun with these because I don't paint for other people a lot. And I offered to do this as a favor, and actually here you can see the little bit of the white in the front and the blend from the airbrushing. I offered to do this as a favor, and I also thought the models were really cool. So I was like, you know what, I'll paint those for you if you want. And he's the same guy that picked up a box of Silver Bayonet for me, that first box, and just bought it for me. So it was kind of a nice gesture. So it worked out kind of well. And so I'm having a little bit of Glenlivet. I haven't started yet, but I'm having a little bit of Glenlivet on the show tonight. As I was talking to Rusty earlier, I've got to savor my scotch at the moment because it's so expensive. It's almost ridiculous. And so this is like
stuff's not cheap now.
Liquid gold. And so that's it for me, I think. Just doing this, just painting. After I paint this red, I'm going to be doing a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of a fade. So it just kind of looks really bright on the ship. Like this is actually a fairly bright red, even though it was trouble for you guys to see it. This is dark vermilion by Model Color, which I like to use because I find it to be a really vibrant red. I enjoy it as a color. But when we look at it here, even with, it's hard. Like one, I was painting it over dark gray. So that'll be part of it. But then once I get the orange going and a little bit of the yellow, it's going to look like it's got glowing lights, which will be cool.
Yeah.
So
no OSL with that.
Yeah, a little bit of that. And so, yeah, so that's it for me.
Okay. Nothing quick and dirty. Well, let's see. What have I been working on? Let's see here. Last weekend, I worked on assembling some squats. The 40K Sigmarine squats. What the heck do they call those guys? They got a new name for them, but I just know them as squats because that's
League of Votan.
Yeah, that's it. League of Votan. We
Something
put a
like
whole
that.
bunch of League of Votan guys together, so I got to paint those here whenever I get around to it. Got how many we got? About 30 models. That should finish up Jesse's League of Votan models.
Nice.
What's coming off I did a little bit of printing this week and some painting. Let me span this out here. There we go. We got Gimli, Legolas. And we got Gimli, Aragorn, and then Legolas here. That's
nice.
For what do you call it? Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. So I got those three, the hunters. And then they're sitting on basically some more cobblestone streets that I worked on. It's like I got some more cobblestone street stuff that will go amongst the buildings for the terrain. Every once in a while, it's like I don't feel like printing anything big. I'll just print off a couple more pieces and just call it good, type of deal. And also I 3D printed a well. Come out to be a nice little piece. So they kind of scale up really nice, with it. So it's a fairly large well. There's like a Gimli next to it. And it also has a couple water troughs that came with it. So kind of nice little things. And I've got 3D printed for Jesse a couple base for his custoids, 30K custoids. And I made some bases for him, put some toppers on them and everything, and painted those up. So that's what I did for him. And I also have got to finish painting up the tanks that go on top of those. But in the meantime, I got a wild hair and decided to paint up 20 assault troops. Or
Death
30K,
Guard.
my Death Guard. So,
cool.
now, that will be I still have 20 more Death Guard heavy weapons guys. I have to put those together. So I will be, what you're doing, Tim, is assembly. So
some assembly required.
Yeah, it's like what they do is that you got to buy the troop kit, and then you got to buy the heavy weapons kit. And then when you put them together, you decide if I'm going to have these guys missile launch guys or these guys with plasma guns or whatever, So I have 3 boxes, I think it is. So each box has like 2 or 3 different kind of heavy weapons in it. But the way in 30K they have them set up, a 5-man to 10-man squad is all the same weapon. So you have to decide if you want to have everybody with rocket launchers, or you want them to have with plasma cannons, or you want them with Volkites or whatever. So I have to decide what I want, because it's pretty expensive to buy 20 guys that are like $85.
Oh yeah.
So you got to decide. So in the end, I'm going to have to buy another box just so I could have enough to troopers. So it's a hard decision what I want to do. No, there's that. My drink of the night is Maker's Mark Kentucky Bourbon. I've been to this distillery. It's a nice little place to visit. Nice little amber color there. Got a nice vanilla scent to it.
You could drink to BattleTech Gothic.
Oh, God. I do have a bottle. I don't you remember. There's a bottle of Maker's Mark sitting over here in my shelf over here when you're over here, Palmer. Yeah. I actually dipped that bottle myself.
You told me about that. Yeah, you did tell me about that.
Right. When you're there, you can dip your own bottle. Take it.
Wasn't it like a metal? Didn't you say it was like a metal thing that you put in there when you dipped it, or you just put the bottle in just directly?
It's a vat of red wax, and you just stick it in there. And
oh, I see.
So red wax, and you just plop it in there and call her good.
Neat.
And it's like, don't dunk it all the way in, just put the top of it and let it drip down. And every bottle's different, so everyone's unique.
Right.
But since I'm drinking bourbon, I put ice in it. Me and bourbon like ice. So, there.
Looks like we got Charles Latora in the house. Thanks for joining in live.
Oh, yeah. Evening, Charles. And Holy Old World just saw the Ancient Army from Warhammer First Edition is back. I hate GW. They wait till I'm out to bring it. Yes.
Cathay. Yeah. I'm sitting there stuttering, trying to think what it is. I was going to say Cali. Yeah, Cathay.
Yeah, we're looking at that, and it's like, oh, just what I need, another army. No, I think I'm going to pass on that army. Because, as you know, I have enough armies. I don't need any more. And I'm still painting on the armies I do have.
Do we really do this because it's a need or
wants? I don't need the army. I want the army.
Run amok.
Yeah. I'm just, as my wife has said, are you running out of space to put your stuff? And I was like, yeah. It's one of those things where as I paint them, every time I start painting an army, I get a new container to put them in because I want them to sit nice and flat. So when they're not painted, they sit in Ziploc bags. It's like they just bunched up because they're all plastic. So it doesn't matter if they're all bunched up together. But when you start painting them, and it's like, oh, I want them nice and neat and rowed up in units. So, and then when the container is full, I know the army's done, right? Is that how that works?
Really? Done? I'm not sure that's part of our vocabulary.
In Warhammer Fantasy, when you got about 5,000 points for an army, I think it's done. When you got every unit in that army, you're probably done.
Yeah, during the height of my addiction, I had all but 3 armies, and I had close to like between 5,000 and 6,000 points for each army.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I thought my addiction was pretty bad. Then I saw this guy; he had over 10,000 points on each army, and he owned every army. Over 10,000 points, and I saw his collection and I thought, oh God, no. It was a great looking collection, but I thought,
Yeah.
no. I don't think my sickness runs that deep.
Especially back then when you would buy, it wasn't by army boxes. You would have to buy them by blisters.
Yeah.
And you're getting 2 or 3 models per blister.
Yeah.
It got a bit spendy, especially with GW.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like when they released the Tomb King and the Bretonnians when Old World started. I mean, I think a lot of people bought that because it was different than all the other releases. It was basically like a starting the game box, like not just like a battalion box or whatever. And I think what this is going to do is it's going to give them some potentially new folks getting models and stuff, like as opposed to just using their old stuff, because it's something, that they can't necessarily get otherwise. Yeah,
it's that army is one I don't have anything of, not even one model. So it'd be starting from scratch. And it's easy to avoid starting a new army when you have nothing to with it. Now, if they had
the number of times I've used that logic to buy something, well, I've got this, so I might as well just purchase that.
Exactly. It's like having a seed that would grow the army from. I don't have any seeds of that army, so it's really easy not to plant it.
I saw that they released the Beastmen. They showed the Beastmen and the Wood Elves release too. So there's been a lot of news that's come out.
Yeah.
And other than there's like a couple things for Beastmen I could probably pick up. I actually saw that they were releasing the Wood Elf Metal Dragon, which I think is one of the best models from Warhammer. I actually think so. It's like one of the best. And I was thinking I might get that just to paint it if I actually can justify spending the money at the time. That would be one I would get just to have on the shelf and paint, I think.
Yeah.
It's just very cool.
I don't have any Wood Elves, so that's one army I've never done anything with, so I could not justify starting that army either.
Yeah.
So that's an easy avoid for me. I think the Wood Elves might be, and I used to have the what do you call the Lizardmen army. I used to have part of it Lizardmen army, and I traded that away. So I just because that what box set was the Lizardmen army in?
Well, you think of the Bretonnian starter set with the
it might have been. I remember
that's the one Dan has, because Dan has Lizardmen because he also got into Bretonnian, so he ended up with some Lizardmen, and I think he's going to at one point do Lizardmen.
Yeah, that's one of the. It's like I decided I didn't want to start another army, so that's when I unloaded it. So somebody was like, "Hey," they were playing. It's like they wanted to play. What the heck? Now this thing gets so bad. That is bad. So I traded. They had the dwarves and didn't want the dwarves, and I traded some my Lizardmen for their dwarves. So I made a nice little trade. Worked out fairly decent. But one of these days, I think I made it worse. There we go. Let's say 5th edition, maybe. Yeah, that might have been 5th edition.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember that far back.
Well, that's Dan's main edition too, right? That he wants to play.
Yeah. Yeah, he liked the 5th edition. And then 6th edition, the Bretonnians, that's where they went to the new totally new look to them? Or are they more, because the old edition, 5th edition, they were more like old English French style look.
Yeah, they look more like Normans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they made that change. Let's see here. We got. Says balloons. Yes, they have balloons. God, those things look so sweet. If you ever look up the old Uncharted Seas, they had the one faction that had balloons in their army, in their navy, and I had a bunch of those in my fleet. That's what it reminds me of, but they made them fancy with this new edition. So yeah, I looked at it and said, "Oh, that's tempting. It'd be kind of nice to have, but I just don't think I want to spend a lot of money on the game right now." It says Aura earlier. I'm getting old and I can't remember. No, I think it was 5th edition, maybe 6th edition. One of the two. Something you have to go look up. All right, so should we discuss the topics of the night?
Sure. Fire away.
Let me repost these. All right. The topic of the night is, they go hand in hand. The topics are, do you prefer to play historical scenarios or point match games, and why? And number 2 is, how accurate are historical games to accurately represent history? And this was Dan's topic, and Dan's not here, so
Yeah.
this is what he wanted to discuss. So we'll do our best for Dan's topic tonight. Now, I'll just kind of preface this question really quickly. Do you prefer historical scenarios or point matches? Now, if you pull up, which kind of is driving the force right now, let's just say we're going to play Fire and Fury. Fire and Fury has they got scenario books that go with these to go with to drive the game system, which is kind of nice in a way. And if you don't have to think too much on, setting a game up, it's like, okay, this is the scenario and everything. That's kind of nice. Now, I've played many historical games, on the other hand, over the years, where they say this is going to be playing this many points and bring your army. So it can go kind of both directions.
Yep.
I don't know what people's experience may be in the chat or with you two, but let's just start with one of you guys. We'll see what you want to say on the matter.
Palmer, you want to go first? Or you want me to
go? You go ahead. I think you're even more historical than I am. I like some historical games, but I think you're even more. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Well, they are two connected topics, because the way I look at historical gaming is I don't necessarily always want to do like a historical refight, because you really can't mimic the nuances that created that situation very much with random dice rolls and that sort of thing. And that's what makes our game. So to me, I like playing those historical refights as like a starting point for something. And then you begin your what ifs. Okay, so I was rereading about Fredericksburg and Burnside's failure and stuff. Well, his failures started not so much with himself, but with people around him not giving him all the information and giving him false information, and which led to one set of failures, another set. So then what you can do is you can look at it and go, well, what if that failure didn't happen? Let's just change that one item and see how this plays out. And then you go through it, you play it out, and you go, oh, okay. So what was the next major error made by the North at Fredericksburg? Well, you take that little piece out and see what that does. And you can play it. They can almost seem like completely different games when you do that. But I do like doing the actual historical refight as a baseline. It's a baseline for all your what ifs. I don't like going into something that's just completely what ifs and completely made up, because I just feel like our games need to be grounded in something. They need to be connected to something. And I think that gives it a little bit more life, for a better word. I don't know what a better word would be. It's that the essence of playing the game, because you know that it's connected with something that actually happened. So that's part of my answer. And then as far as points go, I like points, but I don't think it needs to be. I think, again, it needs to be like more like a guideline, really, than a rule. I'll steal a line from a movie. It's more of a guideline, and kind of keeps things from getting ridiculous. You know, if you just go, well, we're going to play 3,000 points or something, and there's no other restrictions placed in there. Well, I'm going to bring as much of the best stuff possible within those points limitations. But if you say, okay, historically these armies weren't that great, you can have maybe one or two veteran U.S. Army units in the entire force. You can't just make them all like U.S. regular units. And so, yeah, I do like points, but I like them as a guideline, not as a hard, fast rule, because then sometimes that kind of forces you into something that makes the game unplayable.
Yeah.
To say, and I do love games where you have varying troop quality. I think that's such an important part, especially when you're talking about the American Civil War, where the diversification of quality across the different militia units and untrained troops on the battlefield was great. I mean, you can have some guys, one unit that's been through there from the beginning, and it's got a lot of veterans in it, and then you can have this brand new unit going to run at the first sign of trouble. So I love that sort of mixing and matching of that sort of thing within a game. But that's the way I kind of see the historical stuff. I like points, but I don't want it to be the end all rule of what you play, especially historically. And I do like the idea of being kind of connected to the game through something that actually occurred, or could be a specific terrain piece, like a river or river crossing or something like that, that was so paramount in the game that to try to play the game where that is not significant, I think you're losing something within the game itself. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Or did I did I do one of my normal rambles where by the time I get through it, I forget what I said?
Well, when you saying that it's kind of nice to have a scenario
Yes.
within the parameters of the game. You know,
Right.
anytime you're looking at it, it's like you have to look at it as you can say, I'm going to take the Fire and Fury game here, you know, ACW, and it doesn't have points. It's basically a scenario-driven game system. Because, you know, there's no ways around it because it's trying to make a representation of those set-piece battles within the scheme of the scale that you're trying to represent.
Right.
Versus, let's say you're playing Bolt Action or Flames of War. Those are not scenario-driven game systems. Those are point-driven systems to try to play a balanced game where both sides have equal value. It's just how you're attacking the problem with each other.
Right.
Where versus if you're playing a scenario, an actual battle, nothing's ever going to be balanced in real warfare. Because if you're fighting a battle going to war in a balanced way, you're going to lose. Because you want to be as unbalanced as possible for victory.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the concept of asymmetrical gaming.
Yes.
You know, and there, I think that's very important in that sort of scenario where victory by the underdog there has to, it just can't be straight up by points. It can't be straight up, you know, win or lose. There has to be some other avenue for that person to find a way to win the game, as it were. Asymmetrical gaming is interesting. I think that's a topic that we could go to. And I think we have before where we've touched on asymmetrical gaming. And it's
symmetrical versus asymmetrical. Yeah.
And I think that might be something we should discuss the next time when Dan is here, which might be a good progression into the next topic. Mm-hmm. We need to write that down. The guy that has the next show. Break out your pen.
Yeah, not like our memories are that great, is it?
I know it's like my memory is like, what? Squirrel?
Yeah, squirrel.
What do you think, Palmer, on this topic?
Well, I come from, I mean, it's not
landed
that I'm
down under.
It's not that I'm, I don't consider myself partly a historical gamer because I do. I am a little all over the place in my interests, you know, and I don't come from it as my primary place. You know, I started in the fictional world with this, and then I moved towards historical. And I moved towards historical for games traditionally like Bolt Action, which are built very much around, it's not that you can't try to emulate things, but it's very much built around, I think, bringing players over from games like 40K to see historical and, like, you know, playing match style games. And then I moved into games that were a bit more heavy on the try and incorporate the history, like Musket Tomahawks. Even though it's a skirmish game, you read the original edition, like there's a lot of stuff that sucks you in to the background. I think it really depends on what interests you the most. And I think like people that are really interested in history and will actually own a history book of a period in addition to their game are going to really appreciate and think about these battles that actually happened, you know, and tie that to the game. and possibly have more of an expectation or an interest around making them into, going from the game, but having the game emulate a bit. Kind of like the hex and counter games seem to be really good at that. You know what I mean? Like the hex and counter games, like that are not miniature games, seem to be really good at trying to be a bit more deeper into the history.
Yeah.
To some degree. That's my
yeah. If you look at the hex and counter board games, which I have a lot sitting over here, they are scenario driven, and they are trying to make a best representation snapshot of how that battle started.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, it's like dice rolls are gonna just play havoc with your attack plans. So
yeah. So I think for someone like myself that sometimes gets interested in the history more because of the game, or at least with French Indian War, I had an interest in it prior to the game, but sometimes I almost reduce it to the infancy level of playing with army men when you were kids. Sometimes when you were kids and you were just enjoying it as a game, you didn't know necessarily about the history, of World War II when you were playing with army men. You didn't. Not every kid necessarily knows that. Some of them may have watched movies or hear about it. But
I'd say the movies are probably our biggest driving factor when we were kids.
Yeah. But I think sometimes there is an aspect of just immersing yourself at the surface level in the atmosphere of the period. And even like some board games are really abstract, like Stratego, and things that have this like air of like, but it's really nothing to do with the actual battles, right? Like,
yeah,
right. But there's like this like air of that environment, of that genre. And so I probably play almost exclusively matched play with historical games, but it's probably more just given from the kind of gamer I am and just the kind of background I have with history. I'm more and more throughout my life always interested in history more and more, and would consider even in French Indian War maybe doing some sort of fort battle that had some sort of even if it was just inspired by like a real battle, like just to do an asymmetrical game where it's inspired by what had happened in a particular battle. I could find that interesting. Like, it would be interesting. But I mostly have played more match play in my experience, probably because I'm of my infantile aspect of history, in comparison, so.
What I find interesting in some ways is if you look at, let's say, bolt action, for example, which is match play. Both sides have this same kind of setup's going to happen. You're going to decide which models you're going to throw on the table in an equal force, basically. And oops, how do you do that? Where it's taking a snapshot. It's like if you look at World War II, which bolt action takes place in whatever theater it may be, we're talking in any given day there could be 100 firefights or happening at any one day across in a front. And you look at bolt action, that could be a good example of what may be happening on any place along the front during that time.
Yeah.
And which is fine because bolt action isn't a scenario-driven style game. I totally get that, and that's how I look at a game system like that.
Yeah.
Even though an asymmetrical battle might be a better way of looking at it, where one side being attacked, put them in better defensive positions, et cetera, and making it a little more interesting, a little harder for the attacker to succeed, but you're giving them 3-to-1 odds of number of troops to flood into that position. And the whole job of your defender may be, I got to hold out for so many turns before I get pushed back, which is going to be typical. Now, if you look at it from a scenario-driven game system where it's totally set up. You have no points. You look at it and say, "Oh, we're representing this battle. This happened, and we're going to put all the units on the tabletop in exactly the position, putting exact buildings, etc." Is that a fair representation of that battle? Did that actually happen? It's like, do we have all the nuances of that said battle? It's kind of hard to do that, but they're trying to.
So something came to my mind just now as we were talking about this that might be almost an extension of the discussion too, or at least an evidence of what some people like. This isn't hugely popular, but have you heard of the people that like to do the imaginations style games in periods?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Okay. Maybe some folks in the comments can pipe up, but it's within the historical community. It's not something that, but occasionally people will play imaginations where they literally will take a period and they won't assign a real life country to it, but they'll just be like, this is the purple army and this is like the red army, but it's like within like a period.
Red versus blue. Okay. And
they might call it something. They might make up something more accurate than that. But Ian actually, you guys know Ian, who passed away recently, right?
Right.
Remember Ian? He had a 7 Years War imaginations kind of thing going on for a while. And it sort of, for some people, it just takes out, it's sort of just maybe about the troop types and just like what, the armies, but not so much relying on the history so much. Like, it just allows you to look at it from that perspective. Like, just have a game, a game or a scenario. And I've never done it, and I don't know all of the philosophy, but I know that he's not the only one that has coined that term, and there are other people that do it too. And it's interesting because that could be a small segment in choosing to do that for a particular reason. Maybe now I know Ian liked his history, so I don't think he was trying to run away from it, because he would talk about history on his channel, and he often did some games that had a historical context. But for whatever reason, he also liked just gaming, right? And it may be that he just enjoyed, just kind of having games just that where sides are not dependent on historical context. So it's interesting. I wonder how it could relate to this topic in some ways.
Yeah, I'm trying to envision this.
It's really falls in line with the topic, actually, because when, like I was saying, is like when you begin to change the actual historical events around a little bit by taking out you take out a major mistake that was made that really influenced the actual historical battle. You take that out, you begin to go down towards that path of where we're going to use these troop types, but we're not going to say it's the English Civil War with pike and shot. We're saying this is what's happening in this particular place with these particular types of troops, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of where it's kind of like the end game of where you begin to take things out or add things in, and then you begin to move further and further away from the actual historical event, and then you kind of create your own event, but it's still connected by a thread to the actual historical event. But I see that concept, and we've actually done it without really having a name for it. And so you kind of move towards that as you begin to add and subtract things out, and kind of change the actual historical context a little bit. But your starting point, your base, is the actual historical battle, and then you move towards that imagination place where this could be like we'll do. We can do scenarios that happened in the American Civil War, but I can throw my British and my French in and see how that plays out. And I mean, obviously, they weren't here in trying to cross the Rappahannock, so it becomes almost fanciful in a way, but it's also almost like one of those what do they call that? Alternative history books. Have you ever read those? Like those what ifs? Yeah. What if this hadn't happened?
Sure.
Well, and this is what like our tabletop should really be doing. We have our basic historical battle that we fight, but then we need to kind of be creative with it, remembering its base, but then to be creative with it within the context of some historical parameters. But it doesn't have to be a very specific thing. Because that's where the gaming part really comes in. And I agree with what Ian was doing, that it is actually a good way just to play the game, but you have those little nuances with it that you're either adding or taking away. I thought I've done that. I just didn't know there was a name for it.
Sure. And it's funny because you can take this topic in a lot of different directions as we're discussing it. And almost everything has a basis in something. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, whether it be fiction or whether it be historical, almost everything is inspired by something. Whether it be true events, whether it be some sort of fictional setting, whether it be whatever it is. There's very few completely original things out there that don't take anything else into account in their creation, and so because of that, it kind of lends to what you're saying in that, you start out with a certain foundation in something, and then you branch off,
Yes.
And it's kind of funny because a lot of people think of historical folks as being really strict, and like heavy historical folks as being really strict about things at times. But like, if you thought about like Star Wars or something like that, people that are really into Star Wars can be as strict, if not more, about like things being.
You got your grognards and everything.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
You mean like 40K people? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, no, that's true. It's true. Warhammer Fantasy people too.
Whoa!
Hang on.
Hello.
That's the Batman. Batphone.
Is that a cop? That's a cop right there.
Hey, what's going on?
Okay, so as we were saying,
I think that's a first.
So like, it's funny. People probably know the name of this game, but I played a game on either the original Xbox or the PS3 or something, but it was a Star Wars game where you were a generic Jedi, and then you could choose whatever path you wanted to go, and you could be like one of those Jedis that was really good with the lightsaber and fighting. You could be a Jedi, one of those Jedis that was really good at like manipulating the Force and doing like Jedi mind tricks and stuff. And you kind of crafted with a tree, and one of the things that was cool is that it was based in Star Wars, but you were creating your own character, like like from scratch. You weren't just like Luke or like Darth Vader or something like that. And so there's this aspect of it is the Star Wars universe. It is based on the Star Wars universe, but it's branching out, and just kind of in that genre. So it's kind of like.
But what's really great about it is that it gives you freedom, but it gives you freedom within a set of parameters. The Star Wars universe we kind of just know what it is.
Yeah.
And you would recognize something that would be outside of the bounds.
Right.
A real fan of Star Wars would go, that doesn't belong.
What's that Space Marine doing there?
Yeah, what's that Space Marine doing? But within the parameters, there's a tremendous amount of freedom in there to create and to experiment with different combinations and stuff, which it doesn't take too many options before you have so many available creative outcomes that the game almost becomes endless when you can create different characters, or that character moves through the game a particular way. Where if the worst game in the world would be like if I'm making up this character, and no matter what situation, like you have, like in every game you have like a certain set of challenges that are commonplace, right? No matter what your character is, they're going to face these same challenges. Well, the worst game would be like, no matter what I did with my character, the outcome of each one of those is exactly the same.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want that. You would want that the change of my character changes the outcome. Say you have a good Jedi and a somewhat nefarious Jedi, let's say, and each one of them goes into this encounter, and each one of them comes out victorious. You would want the reward or the next series of things to be representative of that character, not just the fact that they won.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You would want it to kind of change. So on our tabletop, we do that same thing. We have our generalized stuff, but then as we're kind of pulling things in, kind of taking a few things out, we begin to create a new storyline. But it's the new storyline within the historical framework. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that is one of the things that, like, diehard like fantasy players don't understand historical. They say it's boring, but they're only looking at it from the aspect of straight up historical refights. Well, I love history, and I love all things about ancient. But if all I could do was do actual historical refights with the same outcome, I wouldn't do it.
No,
I'd go find something else to do. What I like about it is, okay, we set up the parameters. When we play a game where we want to get as close as we can to the historical outcome, because you're never going to do it with dice. You're never going to have that exact historical outcome rolling dice. I mean, the mathematical variables will tell you that eventually you're going to play that game and it's going to be as wonky as it won't come anywhere near the historical outcome. But that being said, it's our base. It's right there. But then you begin to take those things and change those things, and instead of calling it some sort of magical intervention, it's just a normal intervention, but we're just not giving it a fancy name.
Right.
You know,
see, for me,
I can understand.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
All I was going to say is there's two ways. I'm sure there's a million ways to translate the way you would like to do historicals, but like the two ways, aside from just things being generic, the two ways where me, as somebody that's not as rooted in the history at times, would still probably really appreciate the history part, would be right off the bat, a mass battle versus missions. And what I mean by that is, on a mass battle scale, whether it be DBA or some other sort of mass battle game, you can try to somewhat simulate the size of your forces and your terrain, like that you're having these battles on. You're never going to, in this type of game where it's mass battles, you're never going to get down to the level of how every individual in armies of thousands of people were equipped and all the intricacies that are different. But as you zoom out on the table, some of that becomes abstracted. And so, which I'm being kind of obvious with that because I know you guys know that, but the thing is that you can appreciate playing a scenario where you're fighting, at a mass battle level, and you're vaguely trying to emulate what happened in history, like to somewhat, even with, even in an asymmetric way. And I could see that being kind of fun, but I also could see, because I was thinking about Sharp, the show Sharp, with like in the Napoleonics, and how, like, at times history can be fun, even just when you think about things happening in that era that happened to do, like, with the armies and stuff. And you could have something where maybe there's a footnote in a line in its history where it says, like, there was some documents that needed to be, like, gotten, or like there was just, or you could even just pretend that happened, whatever. And you could have it based kind of like you were saying in history, whereas these are the forces that are happening. This is the area that it happened. This is what the countryside looked like. We know that there were spies and scouts. We're actually emulating something that happened, kind of like Rusty said about, like, it being a firefight, but it could be like a scenario where you're trying to achieve something important that helps the war ahead of the battle. And it's just like a small unit, like going into a town, trying to do this. Maybe the town is already secured by the enemy. You have a mission that you have to do. And at a skirmish level, that can be fun, and it's not historically accurate necessarily, but it might be based on some real abstract accuracy, like, as to like what was happening at that time. And I could see how that could be fun, I'm finding, like, just going into Silver Bayonet, I mean, I've played other skirmish games, historical skirmish games, but just even going and dipping my toe into Napoleonics and just painting some Napoleonic, uniforms, I'm kind of excited to do. And, it's got like a supernatural component to it because it's Silver Bayonet. But in there again, it kind of is like based on what you're saying, Tim. It's like, it's not completely made up. It's like, these are real armies. Like, we're saying that these are special forces that we're trying to investigate, supernatural stuff, but it's happening during the Napoleonic War. Like, like these are the real kinds of troops that you might have as specialist figures in here that are based on the war. And, you could even say that, like, you could, because, like, that book gives you the freedom to make your own scenarios up, and even tells you how to make up your own monsters and stuff. Like, it tells you everything, like, it wants you to run with your imagination. And so you could even say that this was happening on the border of France and some other country, and like, you could take it as much as you wanted from history to inform the creation of the scenario. So it's kind of, it's interesting, because I think everything at a certain level is based on something else, and then how good it is how the lenses you put on it.
You ever think that the longevity of playing a game is based on how much imagination you can throw into it?
Yep.
Because if you're constantly playing the same, like, scenario after scenario after scenario, it does get boring after a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Adding a little
fair.
variety to it can make a system
and
fun.
The imagination part of this is endless.
Yeah.
It's endless. Now, my own personal, my idea of sticking with some sort of thread of history with it, I feel like it keeps me from going way too far. But that's just my own personal way that I go about it. It helps me organize things as I move from the very base to something that's almost freewheeling, as it were. But it's not necessary. I mean, if you want to start out there and they say, I like these troops, I like the way they look, and I like the way they play on the table, but I don't want to read about what happened in this battle. I just want to use these guys on the tabletop playing a game. I'm good. I think that's great. It's almost like I could actually see somebody doing that and then reverse engineering all the way back down to the actual historical game,
Mm-hmm.
where the historical player takes the format of the actual encounter and then starts doing these what ifs, putting in, taking stuff out, and gets to the point where the connection is more metaphorical, let's say, than actual.
Yeah.
It becomes I'm going to use these Napoleonic British and my French, but I'm not necessarily going to play Waterloo with them. You know, I don't know if I'm that interested in it that way.
Yeah.
But I will use these guys on the tabletop. So I'll be starting out here, working my way back where somebody else is a very entrenched Napoleonic gamer who might go, okay, well, Austerlitz, this guy, he had to move his whole cavalry brigade from one side of the field to the other, and it caused all this consternation. Well, what happens if he actually lined up in the right position? Does it change anything? So you can play it out that way. And then as he progresses, changing certain aspects of the battle, he's moving further and further towards that freewheeling, well, we're just playing a game with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Where somebody starts in the freewheeling era could actually begin to implement certain historical pieces that changes their freewheeling game to the point that they work it all the way back to the actual historical event, or as close as you can get with dice. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, like you could.
I think it's all kind of connected.
I do too. I actually think you're right. I think a lot of people that don't know anything about history that get into a historical game because they like to take an interest in the history because they actually then like the historical game and they want to know more about it. And then there are folks that actually go the opposite way, that are really into history and not into gaming, and then they get into, like they try the game out and then they actually maybe want to play more games, and even games that may not be as strict into the history. The funny thing that I was thinking is, as somebody, I'm painting myself here as the person that's the least historical because I'm fine to admit, and that may very well be the case. I think that what people that are not as locked into the history and appreciating history find out over time is that truth is stranger than fiction. And yes. What I mean by that is what they find out eventually is that when you get into the history, you find out just how amazing history is. Just how things happen you never could believe would have happened. How you can't believe some of the circumstances that would have happened. People don't realize just how much the variables in history make it colorful, in some ways. And I think that the more that people come up against it, the more they realize that, and then the more it's appreciated and probably wants to be incorporated, and things like that in some ways. I don't know. That's just a generalization, because when any of us that's looked into history have at times read something or seen something where you find out about an individual that had a really remarkable thing happen that affected the events, and it just happens a lot, right? You just find out these tidbits of history that you just didn't know, and that they just had a significant impact on what happened, and that kind of stuff, people kind of take that for granted when they don't know it. They just think about who won the battle. That's, you know what I mean? Who occupies that place now, they don't know, the details,
who cares about who won battle, what day and what time exactly? That's so boring. I just say what's going on is that the phone call. My son and his girlfriend were involved in a police chase pile up.
Oh my! Are they all right?
Yeah, they're fine. They didn't get in the wreck, but they got. They were going down I-235, which is the part of I-35 going through our Des Moines, and they were going down the interstate, and all of a sudden, a bunch of cars went flying. A couple cars they went flying by, and all of a sudden, about 24 police cars chasing them, and a roadblock got ahead of them, and then they cut them off right in front of my son and his girlfriend, and it's like guns out and everything. And
oh man!
So yeah, on this episode of Cops.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
So they got to witness it like right there, right on top of him. So he's kind of amped up. He's like, I got to talk to somebody.
Yeah, that'll get the adrenaline pumping.
Yeah. So now he's messaging. I had to shut off my sound on my phone because normally nobody messages, but he's like talking with my wife about it. So
I'm sure that it's like he's had 5 cups of coffee right now. When something like that happens, it's like the adrenaline kicks in.
So it's like,
The worst part is that after the adrenaline like spike, you get that drop from the adrenaline, and you just kind of almost like collapse,
yeah,
like into jelly. It's like you get that spike, and then all of a sudden it's like,
yeah,
it's like it's over.
Oh man, it's like, are the bullets no longer flying? Okay, I can relax. Yeah, so
I'm alive.
How about we jump in and see what the fan base is saying here?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, we had to listen to what they're telling us that we got wrong.
Okay. Okay, I jumped in. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I think he's got one above that.
Historical scenarios or game base or historical facts with changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah.
I like unbalanced games. Yeah, it's like you look at almost every single historical battle, they were very seldom where they balanced.
Right.
It's somebody's always trying to bring the most amount of force possible into one sledgehammer. It's how you win wars.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree with Tim. Yeah, this is when you said you're rambling. It's like, did I make any sense? Yes, you did.
Yeah. Well, good, because I tend to kind of, I can go away. I mean, I can get off topic real quick.
Is this Clyde saying, I like my games how I like my wife? That's like,
there's a lot of room there for interpretation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room. Yeah. I could see all of us getting in trouble with that one.
Yeah,
yes. If I'm playing historical games, I like to either play historical battles or scenarios. It just makes for a more interesting game as I don't know what to expect or have to improvise.
Right.
Yeah, if you're looking at a set piece battle and trying to play the what if, go from there. It's still, I played many battle scenarios, and the end result is it's like, okay, this scenario, this side won this battle, and then you play it and you win when you were supposed to lose. It's like, okay, Napoleon was not supposed to win Waterloo, but I won Waterloo. All comes down to dice rolls. So that's the intangible. You don't know what's going to happen.
And that's why I always say that you can manipulate things to a point to where you get as close as you can to the historical outcome. But with dice, you can get close, but you really have to manipulate it that way.
Yeah.
So, just like with that, as the further I get away from that, and we do a lot more of the what ifs, I find that's the sweet spot where we start off with those certain set of parameters, and then we just slowly add and subtract things, and you can wind up with the same troops, same terrain, actually winding up playing different games with the same model.
Yeah,
it can be that drastically different with just minor tweaks, and it makes you think, well, what happened if say Burnside got his pontoon bridges on time instead of about a month late, and the Confederates didn't have time to respond and
dig in and stop them.
Dig in and turn it into a killing ground. Because when you read it, he had Lee buffaloed. Lee did not know where the Army of the Potomac was, and if he would have acted at the moment and got his troops across when he was there originally, instead of waiting for the bridges, that changes up. Okay, what then you have to think, okay, what happens if he turns Lee's flank and Lee suddenly realizes Burnside is with a larger force between him and Richmond? What does he do? What are the options?
And pinning him against the river where he has no way. He has to either go through them or try to escape across the river.
Yeah.
Well, and another piece I think that we may not have touched on directly, but maybe it was assumed. I think a lot of times we're talking about the composition of the scenario and like the troops and things like that, but the actual rules themselves may not be perfect simulation or are not, and may or may not.
Yeah.
And so actually they can be, the mechanics can actually be adjusted in order to meet a historical context too, and so sometimes, you can pile up troops here and there and you can do whatever you want to try to make things either the same or different in history. But sometimes like the rule set itself has some limitations that you may change just to make it different, and that might be something like simply adding a +1 on a die for a certain unit, or it could be more complex in saying that, range is now going to be 24 instead of 12 for this particular scenario, and this is why. And just it could be so many different things. That's where I think it's kind of really sky's the limit as far as how you might want to do things.
I agree. And I think that's the misnomer with that non-historical players have about historicals, is that it's just so fixed and regimented. But it's really not. I mean, and really, when you think about the history of actual wargaming, when you go back to the Prussian military schools where they were doing these exercises on tables and stuff, it wasn't about everything working out exactly the way they wanted it to. It was more about to see where things would go wrong, and trying to mathematically determine the best way to overcome those problems that they were more likely to face. And so our historical wargaming kind of comes from that sort of non-restrictive thinking, because they were thinking outside the box the entire time they were doing it. I mean, they knew that men could march so far and they had to have all these things and all your supplies and all that kind of stuff. But they also wanted to know, okay, if this goes wrong, what are we going to do? What's our options here? Where are we going to go? How are we going to respond? And that plays right into our wargaming. And in some games like Warhammer Fantasy Battles, they're unseen things. We take dice rollings in both genres, so we take that out as it's a common thing, the math of the dice. It's common between both fantasy and historical, or sci-fi and historical. So you take that part of it out. So what normally comes into play is with fantasy games, they try to implement those unknowns through some sort of magic system.
Yeah.
We've crippled this unit with this, my magical beanie, says you can't do that anymore. Where the historical thing was, they just never got the orders. They never moved. They didn't know. They were too late, or or they were late getting there. Instead of like some sort of magical delay in historical gaming, we can input the random, okay, this unit, it's not going to receive orders this turn.
Right.
It's not necessarily a magical spell, but it has that effect within the game. And
actually,
I play both. And to me, they both make logical sense. I mean, as far as Magic can make a sense, but you know what I mean? I understand where that's what they're trying to do with the Magic systems is put into the game some randomness, that thing that we look at it like God from above looking down and manipulating all this stuff, and then all of a sudden this thing happens. That's what makes the game interesting.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I like Sharp Practice as a historical game, because with the card system, the game can end, the round can end at any time, so there's uncertainty there. And then, like with the way the cards come out, but also certain units don't always get to move, like they don't always perform for you in the way that you have, like your officers and your officers. Right. You can't always get them to do what you need to get them to do based on the card system and what's happening. And so it's very interesting. Like a good round is, and like DBA has it at a level where like pips, you only get so many pips per turn and it changes each turn. So some rounds you're really effective at what you can do with your army, and then other rounds you're very limited in your choices. You have to make very wise priorities, and it's prioritization in a lot of ways. And so, Sharp's Practice does it a little bit differently in that you just don't know when your time's going to be up. So you have to actually make decisions and prioritize and things like that. And I like that. It's kind of like what you were talking about with how, like in some cases, magic prevents it from happening. In some cases, it's orders that aren't received. And how games actually try to emulate that is interesting.
Yeah.
I was just thinking
I like in our Armada, Star Wars, where you're having to give your orders to your ships in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like retroactively where I said, okay, I want this guy to do engineering where he fixes something. But what I really needed to have happen was concentrated fire. But I didn't do it because I was thinking something else. And so therefore, when you get to that point, there's your curveball. There's the thing that throws off the game. So now you're on the back foot. Now you're going to have to start thinking another 3 turns in advance about where you may be and what you're going to want to try to get accomplished. I love that. I mean, to me, experiencing that on I just think that sort of concept could be implemented in a lot of different games. And they also,
and in all fairness, it differentiates the nimbleness of units, because like small ships can actually react a bit quicker, whereas bigger capital ships that have more bureaucracy and lots going on and lots of people, you have to do more in advance, right? Like that's the way I interpret it.
Well, yeah, it's easier to move a company of guys than it is a battalion of guys.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Just getting everybody lined up and getting all the orders. Yeah, that company can move a lot faster than a battalion and a regiment and or a division. It's. I find that concept would be very interesting in a lot of different historical games, where we all know that, especially in medieval times and in ancient history, where the battle plan was set, we're going to do this. And like with Caesar, he may have be able to do 1 or 2 little things but it's the one thing that makes a difference. Where I could see where, like, if I want to give these guys additional instructions, it's not going to happen immediately and may not happen at all. Yeah, I find that would be very interesting way to game historicals that way.
A good example of that is you look at the in the Crimea charge of Light Brigade, where they got the orders, charge those guns. Didn't specify which guns, and the guy looks at it like, the only guns I see are those right there, so I'm going to charge those guns.
Yes.
clear across the freaking field, past all
Right.
the other guns.
Yes.
And
Not the
getting-
nearest guns. I want to do the ones that are at the far end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
mean,
like you can play that where I played games in the Napoleonic era where you had to write down the orders you wanted to that unit, put it in a piece of paper, and then you say, all right, that orders is now with this courier, and this courier has to go across the battlefield to that unit. And that unit cannot do anything other than the previous orders you gave them until you gave them new orders.
Mm-hmm.
So you physically have to move those orders across the table, and there still could be hit by rifle fire, cannon fire, etc.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of couriers got killed. That's what. Well, that's where the pentathlon comes in the Olympics. That's what that was all about. Were messengers or aide-de-camps who had to swim rivers and ride horses and be able to shoot and to fight with the swords and stuff. That's the pentathlon in the Olympics to a T.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that comes from, is the skill set that those guys needed to have to succeed. And that took a real dude. That was no joke of a job. That guy had to be a badass. Let's just say that. That guy had to be a badass.
All right, we got a few more comments here. Let's delve through them and see what we come up with. Not very accurate, but it can give you some understanding, perspective, what you probably couldn't get from a book, from playing historical games. Imagination is really fun. I dabbled in it for a bit. Clyde says, Palmer is just saying he's the youngest and thus not historical. You are. When you're young, you don't have much history, so you're not historical at all, are you?
I can honestly say I am actually living history.
And Charles says, for me, I'll leave my historical gaming to Hex and Counter, which was, I played, that's how I got my start in historical, was this Hex and Counter games, which are a lot of fun. I was just thinking, it was like one of the games that was it Empires and Alliances, World War I. And the entire game changed on one die roll. And it was the Italians coming in on the side of the Germans. They had a 1 in 6 shot of joining. It's like if you roll this, it's like if I rolled a high number plus with all the modifiers, if I got that highest die roll, they would come in on the side of the Germans, and I rolled it, and they come in 1915, which they didn't join in on the other side. When I'm returned gaming after retiring in 2017, I was mostly into increasing the number of hex counter games that I still had. About 3 years ago, on Not James J's Table Gaming channel. Yeah, it's like I moved away from more hex and counter games into more miniature gaming as I moved into the 90s. Even though I did play a lot of board games up until about 2000. And then I jumped in deep in miniature skirmish gaming. I also said anything that with gunpowder has to be cardboard, only sword, spare shield box. Bow axe in my miniatures just makes it easier on me.
So he likes the melee games better for
yeah.
miniatures.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's all the comments that we have. So yeah, it's an interesting way to play games. There's a lot of ways to skin it, but I have thought of one thing after playing one of those games where you had to have a courier to get your orders across. And when I did design one of my game systems, that's where something I was the optional rules is to move units, you had to have a courier go across and give them new orders if you wanted anything different changed to them. They just didn't do something unless they are totally acted upon by the enemy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think when you look at it that way, you can you can change things dramatically in a game with that one concept. Change the way the game flows, change the amount of absolute control you had over everything. Yeah, I like that concept. I mean, anything that makes it feel like you're dealing with the same sort of issue that the actual commander would have to deal with.
If you read any,
they had to wait to find out whether the guy has actually got the orders. It may be that he can see them, he just can't communicate with us. He sends a guy over there. Well, he's got to wait to make sure that they're going to do the things that he wants them to do before he does something else. I think that's a fascinating addition. Is that delay in orders, a delay in finding out the outcome of the orders that you issue? Because a lot of times when we're playing historical games, everything is so immediate that we're doing, because it's a game and we have limited time. We don't have like forever to do some of this stuff, so we got to kind of have a pace of play.
Yeah.
But as far as the concept go, I really would want to delve into that a little bit more in gaming, especially in like these large Napoleonic battles, where a lot of times, especially on the coalition side, there was a lot of miscommunication that went on, and people not doing exactly what the one guy wanted them to do, but it was their interpretation of what he wanted them to do. It's how the orders get interpreted too that can be different.
Yeah, there's been accounts.
I find that a very fascinating, because I'm fortunate enough. I have a table I can leave set up for weeks on end.
Yeah.
I don't have to like break something down and put it away because I have limited space. That might prolong the game a little bit, but I think it would just throw such an interesting twist in.
Yeah.
It'd be like in like Musket and Tomahawk, where you've got these guys and it's like, I want you to do that, and they just kind of go, nah, I don't think we're going to, boss.
What I was going to say, a lot of games today that are miniature games are set up, if not for tournaments, for certainty in a way that ultimately makes the list building before the game to be maybe a little bit too important. And so I think that actually having games where you actually know that like even like the list building isn't going to actually secure you the victory, that actually, there's uncertainty in there, and that like you're going to actually have to deal with randomness and things that happen that put you into a difficult situation, and that it's not just a matter of getting the new big fancy robot and coming through and stomping everybody, or even just having, no turn one winning, and also, obviously, like there's the whole tournament discussion versus like tournament style games versus more narrative. And I think we're more of us are, Rusty at times can be kind of, you can enjoy, you at times can enjoy the competitive, bit and actually the list building. And I do too, sometimes too. But I think when you have games where you're challenged and really to the point where units, no matter how effective you think they are, can be marginalized significantly in the game, depending on what's going on. I think that tournament players would hate that, but I think people that like to be challenged in a game and are not just looking to win just for winning's sake, those kind of games can be fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like what you're talking about is problem solving.
Yeah.
I like games where I have to solve a problem. Now, with tabletop gaming, you have very limited resources and ability to solve issues, but that's the fun part.
Mhm.
It's like as you set things up, you got to realize something's going to go wrong. And especially if you're not playing a strict historical refight, you have some freedom in deployment and stuff like this. You can say, well, I know that historically they were over there and they didn't take part in the battle per se because of distance or misorder. But in this, I'm going to put them in my reserves. I'm going to have them right here where I can call upon them because I know something is going to go wrong. So that gives you your ability right there to overcome that problem, to problem solve with that unit. I love games like that really challenge you cerebrally what didn't I do right?
Well, those are the games that can be fun to lose. Those are the games
Oh
where,
yeah,
and because I find that when you feel, and I don't normally, I'm not one to normally feel this way, but when you play games that are heavily based on the forces you bring prior to even putting them on the table, like how you make your list, when you play games that
right,
are heavily focused that way, sometimes it can be less satisfying to lose than in games where you lost because you had to make a decision and it didn't work out between what your opponent decided to react and between the choice you made. You could have went
right,
either way. You struggled, you made a decision. It was fascinating to see how the way it worked out. And it makes you want to try it again. Like you actually want to play it again. And you brought up Armada, and like Armada, I've said on this podcast, as well as on my channel many times that I've had I've never had a game of Armada I didn't enjoy. And when I even like some of the best games are the ones that I lost, I always felt that the tension, in that game that develops, based on, like you said, with the orders and what was available to you in the moment when you needed it, as well as
right,
all of the variables that come together at certain moments, just made the game so much fun. And there are other games like that too, for different
right.
reasons. But yeah, I mean, it's that decision, that critical decision making that is kind of makes the game interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, if it was just win or lose, where everything it was dependent upon that, I think I would have given up gaming a long time ago. I mean, that would not appeal to me. And the idea of it becoming difficult and problem solving, that interests me. That's why
Mhm.
I don't mind playing his asymmetrical games where I'm the one at the disadvantage because it makes you think about everything instead of just, well, I've just got so much stuff. Eventually, I'm just going to overwhelm him. Even if I roll poorly, I'm going to win the game.
Mhm.
Well, to me, I would much rather, as far as spending my time gaming from the disadvantage as opposed to gaming from the advantage. If you
Yeah.
win, if you win and you have all the advantages, so what? If you lose and you have all the advantages, it's like, what in the world did you do wrong? But if you're on the other side and you're expected to lose, but you play really well and it's a very close outcome, that's a very satisfying game,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
very satisfying. I
True.
I remember yeah, playing mini games where uh that situation occurs. It can be like I remember one time I was playing Warhammer Fantasy back in the day, and within the first two turns, I lost almost a third of my army.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, and you talk about asymmetrical in a hurry. It
Yeah.
became
Yeah.
asymmetrical in a hurry. So
They run
so
away.
well, some did. Some got roasted by a dragon. Um, that sort of thing. Uh, but yet, okay, you have to switch your mindset. Okay, well, I'm at such a disadvantage now. well, how good can I make this for me? How difficult can I make it on my opponent? Instead of just going, well, I quit. You took out this, you're done. And I've played people that play that way, even not to that extreme. If they lose like one or two, like a good unit early in the game, they're ready to raise the white flag and just, well, let's play a different game now.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you really sure? Man, I had to talk a friend of mine in one time. That happened to him. He's playing against my Skaven, and my Giselle's lit up like one of his demon princes, just lucky shots, got a bunch of them off, and just really did max damage on him. And he really wanted just to raise the white flag early. I said, no, wait a minute now. It's not that bad. I mean, let's just go ahead.
One guy.
Let's just go ahead.
There's so many games of Warhammer. There's so many games of Warhammer Fantasy. You might not even use certain units you have, and so then you have to ask yourself, how important were they? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And like that happens a lot in gaming, where like you think that it's like you're evenly matched, like in points and this and that, but you might only use like a 30% of your army to do most of the work. And then if that's the case, what does that really mean? And the interesting thing is when we talk about asymmetric gaming, a lot of times I think what we're saying is you have this advantage over me and I just sort of accept it. But like as for a scenario, but the reality is some asymmetric gaming isn't asymmetric in every way. And what I mean is you could try to simulate like a Zulu battle against like the Dutch. And it could be that the one person has a lot more people and troops, like, like truly like it's the Zulus, like totally outnumbering them. But then the other are asymmetric in their technology. And so, now it's not just what the numbers are versus the other. It's what the numbers are versus the other. But the fact that this one could do so much more damage to them in certain scenarios. And so it's complex, and in the way it's asymmetric. It's not just,
quality versus quantity.
Battle. And that could be, Tyranids versus Space Marines too. Like,
yeah.
But it's funny. Because
undead archers versus a bunch of beastmen.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so it's. I'm not sure if the beastmen, they don't have the technology, but so. But in any case, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, how you can potentially look at those scenarios.
Okay.
Well, we had hit the 2-hour mark.
Yes.
Oh wow, that went by pretty quick.
Yeah, it did.
It was ended up being a lot of great conversation tonight.
Now I'm just curious what Dan's going to say about this. You guys are all wrong.
Yeah,
you didn't even talk about my 15. You didn't even talk about my 15 millimeter ACW. That's what I was wanting to talk about.
I was working on them. It's like, oh man.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
What was that topic that we were thinking about doing? Symmetrical versus asymmetrical, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah.
All right. I'll just write it down.
Man, that's a deep talk. God, there's so many examples that you can pull from history, and even in some of the 40K books and stuff. When they write those books, it's always the Space Marines being outnumbered by Tyranids or orcs and goblins by some massive number, in the books, and to play that out in an asymmetrical fashion. I mean, yeah.
It's funny because it's fiction. They've done everything, it seems like, because they even had a book. I never read it, but somebody told me about a book once where like 4 Space Marines took over like an entire planet, like like an alien planet or something, and it was like to show like how much they could do, like if done, you know what I mean, like and so they're like completely outnumbered, but they're but it was like talking about like how much 4 Space Marines could actually do if they worked together, in certain situations, and that's asymmetric too.
Well, when the other side only has bows, 4 Space Marines can do a lot. localized. They're not going to control the planet, but they can control a lot by themselves.
Right. All right. Well, great discussion, guys. I got some nice painting done as well.
Well, I got 100 15 mil ACW guys cleaned up and ready to be mounted. So.
Nice.
So that's 100 divided by 3. So yeah, that's 33 stands to add to my 40 here. So that will be 70 stands roughly.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm about halfway to the number of stands I need for my union to actually play a decent sized scenario. Yeah, they add up. It takes a while. So. All right, so we'll be back in 2 weeks, which will be April. Holy,
yes.
That's wow.
April.
Time's flying by. See, the 1st is on what?
April 10th. April 10th.
Yeah. So.
Good. Sounds good.
All right, so it sounds like we might have a topic. We'll run it past Dan and see how he wants to frame that discussion. So.
Now, I tell you what, it might be one of those things where we might want to sit down and take a minute and list some talking points, because that is one of those topics I think that we could just
go deep,
go on and on and on about. There's so many varieties of asymmetrical gaming and ways to go about doing it. I think I'll write some things down, like just some notes to myself, so I don't go rambling off on some tangent somewhere.
You know, we could get some mushrooms prescribed for that discussion, and that would really make things interesting.
Wow, mushroom!
Hey man, is that
medically supervised?
We'll start passing around the gummies, but they're only for medical purposes.
That's right.
What's all the colors with your discussion, man?
Yeah. What shapes do you mean by symmetrical?
I didn't know we were going to do geometry tonight.
Wow, man. All right. Okay, everybody.
All right, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks over in Palmer's channel.
Sounds good. See you all.